Well, welcome back, everyone. Today I am here with Reverend Dr. Paul Lumbu Kayumba. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Fantastic. Well,
Thanks.
Reverend, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, this should be fun. So, quick introduction on you. Feel free to tell me I'm wrong. Tell me where to fix things. You got a master's and a PhD from Northwest University. Is that correct?
That's correct.
As well as a master's of theological studies at George Whitefield College.
That's correct.
You're a professor of Latin and theology at African Christian University
That's
here
right.
in Zambia. You're the head of the research committee of the Senate, also at ACU.
That's correct.
And you are the pastor. You are one of the pastors at Christ Church Zambia.
Christ Church Lusaka.
Christ Church Lusaka. Okay,
That's correct.
there you go. Nice. How long have you been doing that?
Yeah, being a pastor.
Yes.
So we started our church plant before COVID-19.
Okay.
Yeah, that was somewhere 2019, 2018, somewhere there. That's when we started our Bible study and all the preparations for our church plant.
Yeah.
Since that time.
And why did you feel the need to start a church? There's a lot of churches here.
Well, that's a very good question. Our church is part of the Reformed Evangelical Anglican Church of Zambia. And we are the first church so far, the first branch in Lusaka, not just in Lusaka, but in the whole country of Zambia. The reason we felt the need is because of the rise of so many false teachers and preachers in the country, but we wanted to join forces with the Reformed theology movement that is happening already in Zambia. Already we can see that is happening among the Reformed Baptist churches and many other Reformed theology churches. We wanted to join forces so that we may be able to, by the grace of God, to win the battle over these false teachers and preachers that are going around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start kind of at the beginning. You're from Zambia, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. You're from Lusaka.
From Zambia, from Lusaka.
You've traveled outside of the country, obviously, to the Republic of Congo,
yes.
but elsewhere?
Yes, I've traveled outside of the country, but basically just within the continent of Africa.
Okay. Okay. Have you considered living elsewhere in Africa?
Yeah, the place that I've really loved a lot is Cape Town in South Africa.
Cape Town is beautiful.
Yeah.
Such a lovely place.
Yes, I lived there for many years.
Okay.
All my studies, my theological studies and degrees, I did them while in Cape Town.
Ah, nice.
Yes.
And so why'd you move back up here?
Yeah, because of what is happening here at ACU, African Christian University. You know, this is exciting. So I thought it was very, very important for me to come down and join forces with the movement, if I can call it that way.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what made me to come.
That's
back
fantastic.
To Zambia and relocate.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that was how many years ago?
That was should be December 2018, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere there. Yeah. Since then I've been around the country. Yes.
Yeah. So how have you seen, across your lifetime, how have you seen Zambia change and grow and become, different than it originally was?
Yeah, there's been significant changes that have occurred in Zambia over recent decades and in different sectors of life. And first of all, let me just highlight that the sector where I've seen a lot of changes is the economic growth. Zambia has experienced economic growth in development, particularly in sectors such as mining, agriculture, and infrastructure. The country has attracted foreign investment, leading to expansion of industries in the modern modernization and urban centers. There's so many changes. Also, there's been rapid urbanization that has occurred in Zambia, with more people moving from the rural to urban areas in search of better opportunities, in search of better opportunities. This has been to the growth of cities. We've got so many cities that have grown, and I'm sure you know from the statistics that I've visited recently, is that Lusaka, for instance, is one of the 10 fastest growing cities in Africa.
Wow.
So we have...
And you already have 5 million people here.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all those are changes. So there's another factor is the factor of the technology and adoption in Zambia. Zambia has seen significant advancement in technology adoption, particularly in telecommunication and internet connectivity. We've got mobile phone penetrations has increased, facilitating communication access to information and financial services. Many, and the last part I can probably say in terms of changes that I've seen in Zambia so far in the recent decade is the political landscape. Zambia has experienced changes in its political landscape, including transitions of power through democratic elections. We've grown as a country in terms of democracy.
So were you not always democratic?
There's growth. It has been always democratic, but there's growth in terms of democracy and the values that people need to have as we grow as a country. As compared to many other countries, Zambia has always been, labeled as peaceful country, and we've seen peaceful transitions of power that has actually attracted a lot of investors.
Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. Compared to Africa, especially, I know that a lot of people from the Congo came down here.
Yes.
During the wars of the Congo.
Yes.
To have safe haven to be.
So many countries, people from Burundi, people, many of them from Rwanda, so many people, our neighbors, Angola. We've had so many brothers and sisters from Angola, coming because of the peace that we enjoy.
Because it's safe here.
It's safe. It's really safe.
So a lot has changed, but some things have obviously stayed the same. And one of that is Zambians are, from what I've seen, and I might be wrong here, but they seem to be more focused on, the fact of education, getting the degree, getting the diploma, getting all of that, the paperwork, and not necessarily as much on learning. Could you maybe speak to that? Is that true? Am I
not really
out of my mind?
Yeah, no, it's important. Before just I get into that question, it's important to note that generalizations about any group can be oversimplifications, and individuals within Zambian society may have varied perspectives as on education and learning.
Absolutely.
But however, I can provide insight into some common perceptions, in our country, and some common trends. In terms of people focusing much on degrees rather than on learning. So the first one is there's been emphasis on credentials. Emphasis on credentials. In Zambia, as in many other societies, especially in Africa, there is often a strong emphasis on obtaining formal education and degrees as means of securing employment, securing social status and economic advancement. Mm-hmm. Now, this focus on credentials can lead and has led many Zambians to a perception that the primary goal of education is simply to obtain a degree rather than to focus on the process of learning and acquiring knowledge. That's the first thing that I can actually see as common perceptions in many Zambian.
I think that's what I was touching on.
Yes. And another thing is about societal expectations. There are maybe societal expectations and cultural norms that prioritize academic achievements and professional qualifications. This can create, but has also created, especially in Zambia, pressure on individuals to pursue higher education and attain specific qualification, sometimes at the expense of other forms of learning and personal development. So that societal expectation has actually created that kind of pursuit in degrees rather than in normal learning.
Yeah. And what's the importance of that distinction as it plays out in everyday life and in culture?
Making a distinction is very important. Between obtaining a degree and genuine learning is crucial for several reasons. Let me give you one or two or three reasons why the distinction is from. The first reason is the focus on skills and competencies. No, while a degree may demonstrate a certain level of academic attainment, true learning involves the acquisition of skills, knowledge, and competencies that are applicable in various contexts.
Yeah.
So emphasizing learning over simply obtaining a degree encourages individuals to develop critical thinking, problem solving, and practical skills that are relevant to their personal and professional lives.
Yeah.
Yes. Another thing maybe I can add on is the distinction is important because of the lifelong learning. Learning should be viewed as a lifelong journey rather than one-time achievement. So when we value, or by valuing learning beyond formal education, individuals are more likely to engage in continuous self-employment, exploration, adaptation to changing circumstances throughout their lives.
Yes.
So this is some of the reasons why making a distinction between just obtaining a degree and learning is very important.
Yeah. And how do you get Zambians to value not just getting a degree, but learning and valuing the pursuit of knowledge?
Yeah, so getting there, while the focus of obtaining degrees may be prevalent in Zambian society, many individuals and communities in Zambia also value learning in its broader sense. This may manifest in various ways. Informal education. Zambians may engage in informal learning activities.
What do you mean by that?
Such as community workshops.
Okay.
That's what I mean. Vocational training programs, and self-directed study outside of formal educational institutions. Another way of helping Zambian people to value the distinction that is between just obtaining a degree and going into the learning aspect of it is a practical skills development. You see, there's recognition of the importance of practical skills development alongside formal education. So this includes learning through apprenticeships, internships, and hands-on experiences in various fields such as agriculture, craft, and entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in that way, the knowledge and being intelligence here is very different from a place like Cape Town, because the practical intelligence here, I was talking to the professor of psychology at ACU, and he was saying that he had a friend who was out in a village in Zambia, and there was a guy there who had 6 wives. And the whole town viewed him as, and he couldn't afford them, like financially, but the whole town viewed him as intelligent and successful because he had 6 wives. And this man, who's the friend of the professor, wasn't married, and so they viewed him as wildly unsuccessful, even though he had a degree, he had a job, all of that. It kind of speaks to the variance of educational. The label of education and the label of intelligence.
Yeah, the lenses that people would use to define what education is all about, those lenses are different depending on the lenses that people actually use, or glasses that they will use to view education. So you find that the definition of success may differ from one person to another.
Yeah.
The definition of education may differ from one person to another because of the lenses that we wear.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how are those lenses developed?
Yeah, they develop over time. I think I'll be able to unpack a little bit later on. They are rooted right from the beginning. They are part and parcel of the fabrics of the African culture for many years. They are part of the worldview altogether. So people are born and brought up in a particular society that has already put those lenses in place. And people adapt to them. They are born and brought up in such a culture where they are conditioned to view things in a particular way. And so success gets a definition through those lenses altogether. They've developed through the cultural growth of people, yes.
Yeah, success? What is that?
Success, so I'm talking about when you test this person is successful.
Oh, success. Sorry.
Yeah. So
yes.
This person is successful. This person has achieved quite a lot in life, or something like that. You see.
Yeah.
So all those things, they've got different connotations, different meanings, different definitions, depending on the lenses that people wear.
Yeah. And then that ties directly into African Christian University. So what? Well, we'll start with how did you get involved in African Christian University? Because you were in Cape Town.
Yes. Can we go to the other one?
The mission?
Yes, the African traditional religions, and I'll get back to the.
Oh, you want to go to ATR first?
Yes,
Okay.
first, yes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Well, let's head there then. What is ATR? African Traditional Religion, correct?
Yes. So to be specific, African tradition ATR is always good to label it at ATRs in plural, African traditional religions.
Okay.
They refer to the diverse indigenous religious beliefs and practices that have historically existed across the African continent. So they've created a sort of a worldview, a sort of a framework through which people in Africa will be able to view reality, be able to explain, understand what is going on. So these religions, they vary significantly depending on the specific cultural or ethnic or geographical context in which they are being practiced. So African traditional religions, they are characterized by a deep connection to nature, deep connection to ancestors and spirits and the supernatural world. They often involve rituals, ceremonies, oral traditions, and communal practices aimed at maintaining harmony with the natural and spiritual realms. So African traditional religions have played a significant role in shaping African societies, cultures, and worldviews for centuries.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very rooted in the African people, so much that they become like the operating system.
The default settings.
The default settings,
Yeah.
so to speak.
And
people's
was that
lives.
the original kind of religion of Africa as a whole?
Yes, because you'll see later on in some of my answers is that the African religions have predated even the arrival of Christianity in Africa, even the arrival of Islam and other religions.
Yeah.
And these are indigenous; they are rooted in our African identity, so to speak.
Interesting. And why is it? Because the U.S. doesn't really have that as much. And many other developed countries that I've been, or more developed countries that I've been to, also don't really struggle with that. So why is it that, not only Africa, but other like places in South America, we know that the Mayans, and they also worshipped the sun god and things like that. Why is it that as a general rule seems to be the default for not only Africans but for many people around the world? Yeah.
So the prevalence of the African traditional religions in less developed countries or cultures can be attributed to several factors. I can name 2 or 3 of them. The first one is the historical continuity. There's history. African traditional religions have deep historical roots in many African societies. As I said earlier, predating the introduction of the Christianity and Islam. They have been integral to the social, cultural, and spiritual fabric of these societies for many centuries. And this is one of the reasons why they have been prevalent in Africa, because they are part and parcel of the identity of the African people. Even with the introduction of other religions, it's very interesting to note that many aspects of the African traditional religions have persisted due to their embeddedness in the local tradition and identities. It's one of the reasons. So there's this historical continuity that is going on there. You find even in the so-called Christian areas or Christian zones where there's Christianity, you find there's a lot of what I can call there's a lot of mixage. You find that there's a lot of
it still is it's relevant in their minds and in the way that they
Another
think.
factor is cultural continuity. African traditional religions are closely intertwined with African cultures, encompassing beliefs, rituals, customs, and social structures. Now, in less developed countries or cultures where traditional ways of life are preserved, African traditional religions continue to be practiced as means of maintaining cultural heritage and identity.
Interesting.
Yeah. So much that it is very difficult to divorce the African individual who sees themselves identified with it. That's my identity.
Yeah.
You know, something to do with identity is non-negotiable.
It's very tough, and this
Yes,
is a
it's
conversation I've had with prophets.
Yes, yes. It's
As
very,
well,
Yes,
is
non-negotiable.
'cause-
It's part and parcel of who people are.
Yeah, and
so,
yeah.
yes.
So why is it that, you've explained helpfully, thank you, why it kind of has a hold on people, but why is it that that's kind of the default setting? Why did people come to that conclusion as opposed to come to a different conclusion in the beginning?
Yeah. First of all, remember, just like a laptop comes with a particular operating system,
Mm-hmm.
and everything else is determined or explained by that operating system, So, and this explains why it is a default, because that's the first software, so to speak, the operating system, a default operating system that has been placed in people from the beginning, from the word go. Everything else is determined by that particular framework of explaining and understanding reality. So if you ask me the question of why is it like that, the spiritual connection in African traditional religions. African traditional religions offer believers a deep spiritual connection to their ancestors, deep spiritual connections to the nature and the divine. So the rituals, so you can see that even the most intellectual people, by default, they would rather explain reality around them through the lenses of the African traditional religions rather than many other means. That's the default. When your car has got a breakdown, for instance, you don't think of a mechanic problem first.
Right.
You don't think of that first. It's not a default way. You look at, maybe somebody has looked at me with a bad eye this morning.
Interesting.
Maybe somebody is jealous of my progress. Maybe that particular neighbor of mine who's not happy with my development and my success. That is the first primary explanation of the reality we face. Be it positive or negative, first and foremost, we think of the default way of thinking is that of the African traditional religions, because that's the operating system.
Fascinating.
The spiritual connection to that. And also the another reason why it's the default is because of community and identity. African traditional religions, they force a strong sense of community and belonging among adherents. So they often provide a framework for social cohesion, solidarity, and shared values with families, clans, and ethnic groups. For many people practicing the African traditional religion, it is not just a matter of personal beliefs, but also a means of affirming cultural identity and heritage. And this and many others, any other reasons, this is what it explains why it is more like a default, because take it as the first program that has been programmed in people, like an operating system, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, no, Africans are definitely much more spiritual and much more openly spiritual than much of the West, which is a good thing, I think, as a general rule. And is why, you meet people who are, I meet Yango drivers who are openly Christian, which is something that would never happen in the U.S. or even in Cape Town.
Yes.
But what can you kind of explain what is ATR as far as like what is the actual like the behind the name of the religion itself and the default? What is it exactly? Because I know Isaac Madsen, and he told me to ask you, was saying it's something like there's a god or gods in everything as far as nature. Like there's the god of the river and the god of the plants. Is that correct?
Yes, there are spirits everywhere. It's pretty much, if you know something of animism, so there are spirits in everything. And everything that is happening, rivers, in the trees and in animals, they are spirits. There are certain animals that we don't feel comfortable with in Africa and many African countries.
Really?
The way you'd take a cat like a pet, many African people would not, because a pet is more like, a very good place where evil spirits would actually be.
Ah, interesting.
So the witches and wizards and people who would want to harm you, they would always use certain animals, and some of the animals, including the pets we use, like cats and dogs and stuff like this. You find that many African people are not very much comfortable with keeping those animals with them because of the belief of the spirits in everything. Everything you find a spirit, the first explanation is there a spirit that has gone? A spirit can go into your car, a spirit can go into your laptop. That's not everything you see. Instead of looking at, is there anything mechanic? Is there anything that my laptop is...
A little more logically.
There's no, it's more logic. But that is the second, third, or fourth appeal of understanding what is going on.
That's funny.
The default is there should be something spiritual happening.
That's funny.
Something, yes. And
the reason my cars broke down is because there's a demon.
There should be a demon. There
invested
should be a spirit.
in the engine.
Somebody is jealous of you somewhere, or someone is not happy with your success somehow, and they would want to, create something, out of nothing, just to harm you or something like that.
And do you think that's just because humans have like this innate understanding that there is a spiritual world? That there is something beyond the mere physical, and that's kind of where that stems from, or do you think there's something else to it?
It could be one of the reasons, but from my understanding, it is just part of the fundamentals of the African traditional religions. African people are spiritual people, and because from the word go, there's always a value of the other world, the spiritual world, which is more influential and more powerful than the physical one. And whoever has access to that particular world, that person is more important than any other person. And then you'll see later on, this is the reason why you find that someone who claims to have access to the other spiritual world, everybody will flock to them. And you want to get an explanation of what is going on in their lives.
And thus we find ourselves at prophets.
Yes, that's the rise of prophets.
Yes.
Yes.
So, can you kind of that kind of makes more sense of why prophets are so prevalent here, and not prevalent in much of the more I would say much of the West, because the West is far more, I would say, logical in its thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my question from that is, why is it that so many people feel that they are prophets or apostles or teachers or whatever they are?
Yeah. That role is very important because it's very much related to what we believe. When I say we believe, I mean generally as Africans, we believe in the... it's one of the fundamentals of the African traditional religions. In the African traditional religions, not everyone has access to the other world. And then whoever has access to the other world is more like a bridge between the humans and the ancestors, the living and the dead. The dead are more important.
Yeah.
And this person who mediates is very important and is known as village witch doctor in the African traditional religions, and which is exactly the role that the modern prophets play. And then that's the reason why it doesn't challenge many Africans, because it's part and parcel of the African beliefs and practices. We need someone to mediate between the other world and this world. And this is the role that the prophets they do, because we want to know what is going on in my life. If my health is deteriorating, if I'm not getting a job, if I'm struggling in any area of life, my family is not doing well, if I was or my family members were involved in an accident, I need to know what is going on, because the other world has got all the answers to what I'm going through. And who's going to go there? Not everybody, but only a person who has connection to that world. Now, in the African traditional religions, this person is known as a village witch doctor, and who plays very much the same role as the prophet. Well, this explains why we have so many prophets in Africa, because these people, they are doing the same job as what the village witch doctor would do,
Right.
to explain the reality of what is going on in their lives.
But many of them feel like they have like a personal calling. Not so. Are you saying that it's? Let me try and rephrase this. Are you saying that many of these people say that because it's like it's if you want to be successful, if you want to be seen as important, that's kind of what you do, or is it ATR is so deeply ingrained in them that they feel that any kind of spiritual stirring, and therefore they are a prophet or
Yeah.
an
So
apostle?
success is not necessarily the pursuit of prophets, although it is part of what they are pursuing. But here we are talking about people who are in relationship with the prophet. Do you want to succeed? You need to have someone in between who is going to stand between you and the other world. And then for you to succeed in everything you are doing, you need to know what is going on. You need to get information that you can only access from the other world through that person who calls himself or herself a prophet. Now, these people, they claim to have special calling, just like in the African traditional religion. Some of the village witch doctors were trained. Some of them were called by birth. They are born, and then everybody will say they've got a spirit of particular spirit that will help them to mediate between the spiritual world and the material world, something like that. Some are trained people. You can be trained to be a village witch doctor. You can be trained to be a mediator between the other world and this world of reality that we are in. And so that category or that reality is actually the same category that is happening with so many modern prophets that we have. So much that we entertain them without thinking, because they are part and parcel of our beliefs and practices as Africans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But given that many of these prophets' foretellings or prophecies don't eventually come true, why do people keep falling for them?
That's a very good question. There's deception. There's deception. If we are to use the Bible as a lens to explaining why, it's very clear that the human beings are prone to wander, and it's very easy to deceive them by giving them false hopes. And then the reason why they keep on falling to them, because what the prophets do when it doesn't work, it is always the fault of
The spirit world.
Not the spiritual world,
really?
the person. The person who has come to consult them. If it works, which means it is the prophet who is powerful, who has helped them. But if it doesn't work, there's something wrong with the person who has come to consult them. It is your fault. When
Interesting.
it works, it is me. When it doesn't work, it is your fault, which means you better go back and work on what you didn't do well and come back. That's why they keep on going back to them again and again, because there should be something wrong that in the process somehow I'm missing for me to get it right. There's false hope all the time, and that's the nature of sin. That's the nature of sin, my brother. So sin is deceitful. It promises what it never delivers.
Mm-hmm. And we know that the heart is also deceitful
As
and
well.
desperately wicked.
That's right.
Yes.
So you keep on going and going.
Those two come hand in hand.
Yes.
Yes. Why is it that, and this is kind of tying off that just a little bit, many Zambians, at least that I've met, have shy away from taking responsibility for a lot of things, especially things that they do or things that go wrong. Why is that? Is that in any way tied to ATR?
Yeah, sort of, because of the community life. So ATR is not the African traditionalists. They are not something we can underestimate. Just like I said, it's like a default way of explaining realities. So when something goes wrong in my life, it's not about me, someone else. So there's a mentality of blame shifting in the African traditional religions. Everything is is about someone else was done. So that has contributed very much to the mentality of not taking responsibilities, because it's not up to me. It's up to someone who does not like my life, does not like my success. Instead of using the logical mind and trying to see what is it that has gone wrong with me, but the question is not always with me, is outside of me, is somebody else that is responsible for what is going on in my life.
Aha.
That has really contributed quite a lot to the mentality of not taking responsibility for our actions and for our failures and for our success and whatever. It's about the belief which is so deep in us in how the other world is more influential on us.
Interesting. So how does Zambia free, and much of Africa as well, how does it free itself from this lie?
It's very difficult to free ourselves from that, but we know that with the light of the Word of God, the true exposition of the Bible, that can actually help people to begin to see light of the truth. That's the reason why we insist very much in the right reading and studying of the scriptures. The scriptures will give us another way of looking at life, to give us another lens of looking at life in a different way. I think the rise of Christianity, the Reformed theology, the reading of scriptures, it is one way, or the way, if I can put it that way, of helping us to free ourselves from all these lies that we fall ourselves into. It's just by change. It's like when your laptop is not working properly because of the operating system, you change the operating system.
You update the software.
You update it after. Yeah, that's exactly. It's a process. It's not something that you do like an event. It's a process. So Zambians and Christians should be exposed as a way of a process to the right preaching and exposition of the word as a process that is actually undoing, so to speak, this default way of looking at reality, and in giving them the right way, which is the Word of God, the light of the Scriptures.
Interesting. And so, but how do, at the same time, there are things that happen to us that are unexplainable, that are kind of filled with the, there are things that are non-logical and very spiritual. How do you kind of explain that from a, because I've had trouble with this when talking to people in my class who think they're prophets. They're like, but then they point out there are things that happen that don't make any like physical and mathematical sense. And they tie from that obviously that means that they're prophets. What is the correct response to those kinds of situations?
Yeah, we will never know. We will never have answers to everything that is happening in our lives. That is reality. That is true. And also we know, even the Bible confirms, that the spiritual world does exist.
Yes.
The devils, the demons, and evil spirits are there.
Yeah.
And but one of the correct responses we can actually bring to such a question is what matters is what God has given us to know. What does not matter to us, God has hidden it. And then it's not my responsibility to begin and pry into what God has actually kept secret for me. The secret things belongs to God, Deuteronomy 29:29. The hidden things, they belong to God, but the ones that are revealed in the law, they are for you and your children. So God has given us what we know in the scriptures. Whatever is difficult to understand and explain is under the sovereignty of God.
Yeah.
We trust God, who is powerful, who works behind the scenes. I don't need to know what is happening. I don't need to know what is going on in my. But what I need to know is that there's God who is powerful than all the spirits, all the demons, and all what is happening in the other world. So I
Right.
rely in the sovereignty of God. I believe there's a loving God and a powerful God who is every day busy working behind the scenes for the good of the people of God. And that should actually help us and give us comfort and to relax. All we need to know is what God has revealed in Scripture. What God has hidden, it belongs to Him. He's taking care of that. So
Yes.
we trust Him.
But then also in the Bible, it talks about like the glory of God is to conceal a matter, but the glory of kings to search things out. So is what you're saying that for such, for the things of the world that we cannot see, those are not our things to figure out yet.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say.
But then my question from that is, there are things that happen to us that are that have, things that have even happened to me that don't really make any logical sense. And it seems that the spirit world is involved. Is the correct response to that to kind of accept it, thank God, and move on? Or is the correct response to try and understand why or how?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Again, I go back to what the Bible says. What does the Bible say? We know that the spiritual world exists. The world of the wicked spirits does exist. We know that for sure, but we don't understand why and how things happen. God is very powerful. The Lord of the God of the Bible is powerful and loving. He does not let something happen to you or to me for no reason. For no reason. There's a reason that God allows certain situations to happen to us. If there's something bad that is not going to contribute to my spiritual growth or knowing Him or being Christ-like in character, God in His power is not going to let that thing happen to me. The reason why it has happened to me, what I know is that there's something good out of it, but I don't know what is that good. I don't need to figure out. I trust God that God is doing something, and I pray and I say, God, continue to guide me and continue to protect my life. I don't need to figure out what is going on, but I trust that God, you've let this thing happen in my life for a good reason in me. I think one has to develop trust in the sovereignty of God. The God who is sovereign may not fully understand. We pray. We go to God in prayer. We may not fully understand, and then we express our human anxieties and uncertainties of certain things. There's nothing wrong about that.
Mm-hmm.
What is going on in my life, God? Is it a devil is involved? Is it evil spirits or something like that? But I come to you, God, who understands everything that is going on, to take care of those things. I'm not going to spend the rest of my day and my life trying to figure out why of that. But I trust God, who has laid that particular thing to happen in my life, and He knows what He's doing. I don't have all the we will not have all the explanations. We trust God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely. For every temptation is just a trial.
Yes.
To see how there are some things we won't understand, but
That's right.
coming to God in humility.
That's right.
Is the right response. So Africa is very spiritual, but the West is much less spiritual and much more. They would say logical, much more mathematical thinking.
Yes.
And I think the West has gone too far in that, where they're like, if you say you are a Christian, that is seen as like, what are you doing? Why would you tell anyone that? Here, it's much more, it's the complete opposite.
That's right.
What is the right middle ground? Where is the spot in between those two that we should be striving for?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I think the Bible is our guidance. The Bible is the upfront guidance of God. That's what God has given us. What the Bible teaches about the spiritual world is correct. So we need to balance ourselves. We shouldn't be into seeing the spirits in everything, like in Africa, and at the same time we should not deceive ourselves as if the world of the spirit does not exist. So we need to balance that. And then what helps us to balance is the Word of God, because the Word of God is more logical, and especially when we develop critical thinking and with the light of the Spirit of God in our lives, we should be able to balance those things. We should not reject the reality of the spiritual world when the Bible affirms it, and we should not be into it as if we're just robots. There's nothing that is going on in our lives in a logical way. Everything is just spirits. I think the balance is given by the Bible, but the scriptures themselves, they give us the balance so that we may not be on the other extremes altogether. I believe that there are so many diseases and so many illnesses that we see in the Bible that were caused by demons and evil spirits. And it's very much confirmed in the Bible.
We know that from Job.
We know,
Yeah.
for sure. And so to attribute everything that is spiritual as to nonsense, I think is to go to the extreme.
Yeah.
Yes.
Much of much of the history of humanity is jumping from one ditch to the other.
Yes.
And
You're
Christianity seems to be
right
straight down the middle of the road.
That's right.
In many aspects.
Yes.
And
Correct.
but in many aspects it's also not.
Mm.
So well, do you want to talk about ACU now, or do you want to save that for later?
No, later. We'll
Later,
talk about
okay.
that later.
Let's
Thanks.
talk about Zambians as a whole. I've learned a lot in my 2.5 months here, and I'm sure I have much more to learn. But one of the things I've noticed that's strikingly different from the U.S. is the Zambians are very community-oriented. Why is that? Is it based off ATR? Is it not? Is that just the base operating system?
That's a good one. Just like I said, it's not everything that is in the African traditional religion that is bad, or let me put it this way, it's not everything about the African culture that is bad. There are so many values, so many good things that
Absolutely.
we embrace. Yes.
100%.
Yes, and one of them is the philosophy of Ubuntu. The philosophy of Ubuntu. So Zambian culture, like many other African cultures, embraces the philosophy of Ubuntu, which emphasizes the interconnectedness of individuals within a community.
Interesting.
Ubuntu values communal harmony, cooperation, and mutual support, fostering a strong sense of collective responsibility and solidarity among Zambians. This is one of the reasons why you see the Zambian community, just like many other Africans, we are community-oriented people. It's because of this philosophy of Ubuntu. Another thing is what we call extended family structures.
That's a big thing as well. Yes, I've noticed that.
Yes. It is part of our values. It's about of our identity as Africans. Traditional Zambian society, just like many other African societies, typically revolves around extended family structures where individuals maintain close ties with relatives beyond the nuclear family. This emphasis on kinship creates a network of support and in the interdependence, with family members often coming together to help one another in times of need. This is one of the reasons why you see that kind of philosophy of being community-oriented. Yes.
Yeah. And but from that, what possibilities do Zambians have that much of the West does not because of their community-orientedness?
Yeah, so one of the opportunities is the economic opportunities. Let's talk about economic opportunities. So because of rapid growth of cities in Zambia, like I said earlier on, Lusaka, Ndola, Kitwe, Livingstone, Kasama, all these cities have really grown in the last few decades or so. So these cities, they offer increased job opportunities in various sectors such as construction, manufacturing, services and entrepreneurship. Zambians may benefit from these opportunities to improve their standard of living and achieve upward social mobility. Because of that philosophy of Ubuntu, we are interconnected to each other, and trying to help one another in growing our economy in a certain way. Another opportunity that we have is infrastructure development. Growing cities, you know that growing cities often witness significant infrastructure. You can see Zambia has really changed
Mm-hmm.
over the last few years, including roads, public transportation, utilities, and amenities. Improved infrastructures enhance the quality of life for residents and facilitates economic activities and social interactions. So there are so many opportunities we can get based on the values, the African values that we already have as people who are community oriented to help one another in order to grow as a country.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, there is kind of an odd mentality that if someone else has succeeded, we should try and get as much out of that person as possible, monetarily. Your great aunt twice removed is sick. We need you to pay for it because you have money. Why is that, and how can because that hinders growth not only of individuals but also of cultures. So how do you why is that, and how do you change it?
Why is that? And that's the some of the disadvantages of being community oriented. But then there are so many advantages, there are so many disadvantages, and one has to be able to see the balance on how this kind of mentality does help or sometimes doesn't help. This is to answer the question of how is that, and then why. As I said earlier on, it is this idea of depending on others has made many people not to be responsible, and not to see how they can grow themselves and being dependent on others. So much that if you don't help them, they look at you like someone who has actually broken the rules of community, so to speak. You really have to. You must help them.
Yeah.
And that has encouraged laziness in people. That has encouraged the not taking responsibilities for themselves and even grow. And then to the point where we tend to think that we will succeed, and then it even hinders success,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak, and growth.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, absolutely. And from that kind of non-conforming, we like people who conform. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because I kind of had this moment this morning where I was like, I wonder if this is the case, that humans are generally scared of someone they know, their friend or their relative or someone else, kind of being the monster in the closet. They don't want people they know or have assumed the people they know are normal to turn out to be kind of something else than they thought they were. There's this scared of the unknown that makes us kind of encourage the conformers but also discourage the non-conformers. And at the same time, there's a fundamental drive in humans to be unique and different,
Mm-hmm.
and something else from other people.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true? Am I full of soup? Why is it that people like the safety of other people being predictable, but at the same time want themselves to be something different from that?
Yeah, can you make it clear again? I don't get.
Yeah,
what
sorry,
you're
that's a bit. Is it true that people are generally scared that, because like if you found out that someone you knew really well was actually like a psychopath,
Mm.
you'd be like, oh no, and it hit you even more because you thought this person was a normal person.
Mm-hmm.
But some people, like, not that extreme, some people are scared of someone they know turning out to be something different than they thought they would be.
Mm-hmm. Different, like in a positive way or in a
Or
negative
just
way?
different in like more driven, more, as far as some families there are people who are more driven, some people are less driven, some people are more they see opportunities better and they want to go get them. They love work more. People don't like that as much because it's something different and in a way scary, because it makes you feel kind of like, I thought I knew this person, I thought I was equal with this person, and suddenly there's something different. Is that true?
Yeah, it's true, but when I say it's true, it's not just true like for the Zambian people.
Oh, no, this is true for everyone.
It's just true for everyone, for
Yeah.
human beings. You know, we kind of like being in a comfort zone, you know,
Yeah.
and the comfort zone is a place where you feel safe, and all your experiences, all your knowledge, and all your relationships in a comfort zone, they are safe for you. And we don't normally want to get outside of our comfort zone.
And there's a weird thing where we don't want our
Yeah.
friends and family to get outside that comfort zone as well.
That's right, yes. You know, but when someone has been brave enough to break the comfort zone and grow, at the same time you tend to have that feeling of fear. What is it that is outside there, the comfort zone? But at the same time you become jealous because you've seen the growth of that person moving and thriving very well. Instead of that being an inspiration for you, many people would probably think of, let me emulate, let me
Right.
do the same, and others would think maybe this, like in the Zambian culture or in African culture in general, they might probably think that there's something that is extra, something is out of this world that has made this person to move out of the comfort zone instead of attempting to break the barriers and grow. I think is what we get afraid, what we scare to do is what that keeps us in our comfort zone. We need to break that, go out of that comfort zone and grow.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. That's why I'm here.
Yes.
Yeah,
Definitely.
it's a break outside of the comfort zone.
That's right.
Become something different. So last question, or at least for today.
Yes.
Zambians think and this, I'm sure this is true of much of Africa as well. Zambians think very survivalistically. Let's try and make it today, and it doesn't really matter about, the future is unknown, and therefore we shouldn't really think about it. And that, again, a generalization, so that's not true of everyone. But why is it that Zambians think so survivalistically?
I think that's a very important question. May I answer it later?
You can? Okay,
Yes,
you would
because
like to.
I had already started working on that answer, just in a more. I need to be fair about what are my thoughts and my opinions about what is. It's a very important question. I've put something already there, but I need to rephrase
Okay.
it properly.
You want to rephrase that?
Yes.
All right, sounds good.
So let's put it in that episode as well.
Great. Well,
that'd be great.
so what would your final words of encouragement be for Zambians who are trying to think more logically, think more biblically, trying to break that comfort zone, break out of that zone of ease?
Yes. I think it's very encouraging to see many Zambian people, especially with our Christian heritage. We may have disadvantages of Zambia being a Christian nation. That kind of statement, has led to nominalism. Many Christians of names, they're not really Christian, but there are so many positive things we can get out of that. So the Bible is very logical. The Bible is very logical, and God is the most sane person we have. And then following God, you're not going to be insane at all. Following what God has provided as guideline in success, you are the most sane person and safe altogether. The other world may probably think of you as a madman, as a madwoman.
As crazy.
As crazy. But the Christianity makes more sense in everything that we do. So I encourage Zambians, especially Christians, or Zambians as well, to continue reading the scriptures, to continue getting the right exposition of the Bible, so that we may think in a more logical way that will help us to thrive and be able to be useful in this society that God has given us. We must be useful people, people that have come to make positive impact, and that positive impact to the glory of this God. And that can only happen when we follow the most sane person, who is God, and God has given us his logical way of thinking in scriptures that encourages each one of us to be a successful person in the perspective of God.
Yes, much of the reason that the West is so successful monetarily, economically, but as well as like infrastructurally, you know, the buildings, the cathedrals, the architecture, all of it is because it was founded on Christian ideas.
Yes, that's right.
And Christian ideas are the only way it's the only way for, I mean, looking at, I have more questions on this as well, but we'll be back for another episode at some point,
right.
Lord willing, because we've got more to talk about. But
Yes.
it's the only way that men and women are equal in society. It's the only way that people can actually succeed in a fair and even way. Like, you know, it's not gonna. Some people, it's not everyone wins the lottery, and so it's. But if you're trying to succeed and you're constantly being pulled down by your friends and your neighbors, it's much harder. And with Christianity, there's this encouragement of success and encouragement of working hard to the glory of God, for the glory of God.
The glory of God.
And that Christianity is the only way that society works.
It is the only way. I agree with you. It's the only way.
And so in that way, we should read your Bibles more.
Yes.
Pray.
Yes.
And go to church.
That's right.
But not to a church where they're full of prophets.
No.
There you go. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Thank you,
find you
brother.
Online?
That's right. So I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm under my names, the very first names that.
There's not many people with that name.
Really?
I have the same problem.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Yes. Paul Lumbu Kayumba. You find me there, and also when you go to the ACU website, you should be able to see me under the School of Theology and the School of Divinity. You'll find me there online.
Yeah.
There. Thanks.
Absolutely. And I'll put those links into the description and everything.
Thanks.
And we will be back, Lord willing.
That's right.
To talk more.
Thank you,
so
brother.
thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
This was
Thank you
very
so
fun.
much.
Very
Wonderful.
helpful.
Thanks.
See you guys.
Okay, bye.
Not a little,